Hey there, film fans. I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
I'm John. Welcome to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies, both new and old, with a strictly positive, critical eye.
That's right. And to avoid any lazy negativity, we're making this a drinking game. Any negative criticism about a film is absolutely allowed, but you will be called out for it, and you will have to take a drink every time.
So pour yourself a glass, join us, and give it up for some films we love. And Jeff, what are we doing this week?
Well, I'm listening to John pour a beer in our intro because he cares about everybody. So I don't know if you've heard, guys, but the coronavirus is going around, and Jesus Christ, Dave. And we are all based out of New York City, although I'm currently escaping in Massachusetts. So anyway, we decided that a lot of people have a lot of time to watch movies and try to not think about the impending doom before us. So we decided to do what we're calling the Corona Franchise Face-Off. That's right, the Corona Franchise Face-Off, which is a list of 16 trilogies or franchises that we came up with, and we ranked 1 to 16 for basically no reason other than we decided that this was a 1 seed, this was a 10 seed, and this was a 16 seed. And we are going to March Madness style have a battle from the top to the end to see which film franchise is the best. And we're going to start with 1 and 16. Why don't we...
Very quickly, feel free to follow us on Instagram if you want to see. We are at The Love of Cinema. Is The Love of Cinema pod?
The Love of Cinema pod.
The Love of Cinema pod. We are going to try to keep that updated for you so you can follow along with the brackets. We're going to post a full bracket as well, and we'll be narrowing it down in real time as we release these things if you want to follow along. Also want to give our usual shout out to our usual beer provider. He's not with us this time, just like in our last episode. We're trying to play it safe here in New York City, so we did not pick up the beers from Mr. Carlos Barroso, but he is our beer sponsor. That is C. Barroso Bar 2019. If you want to give him a follow on Instagram. The brews are delicious. We're very, very excited to get those back in our hands when everything's calmed down back here. And as usual,
when this quarantine's lifted, it's going to be like prohibition ended.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're going to need it by that time. He said he's sitting on 370 beers at his house right now. He was so ready to give out his beers and to pump us up with ours, hand it out to his friends.
That's like 2 episodes for us.
It's like, oh, I'm so disappointed. One last shout out. All the music in these episodes is provided by the artist Dasein. That's DASEIN. Give him a follow at SoundCloud /Dasein-artist if you want to give a good listen. There's free downloads available. All right, welcome back to the episode.
So yeah, as we said, we are doing this remotely. So again, we're in 3 different locations. I can see these guys. But did you guys see the absolute beer apocalypse I had at the beginning of the show just a second ago?
No, what just happened?
I am now sitting in soggy trousers. I don't know.
First of all, I don't believe you're wearing
bag
trousers.
or something.
I don't believe you're wearing trousers.
I don't either.
We were FaceTiming, and I'm pretty sure we were all pants.
You got me.
This is also a drinking game, and you keep drinking 8% alcohol beers. Like,
well, for an Australian, that's like a 2.
Oh, sure.
That is true. All right.
So, anyway, I think it's time to get to it. So we are going to start with our top-ranked trilogy or franchise. Our number 1 seed, since Kansas, the number 1 seed, who was supposed to be in this year's March Madness, is not going to get to play basketball. We decided the new number 1 seed is the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Boom! The world has changed,
right.
you guys. I feel it in the water, and I feel it in the earth, and I smell it in the air. Right. Who's ready to talk about this fucking franchise?
Yeah, John's ready. John reread the books and rewatched all the movies recently. Also, we should point out they are redoing the Lord of the Rings franchise, so it's really funny that we have it as our 1 seed, and Amazon decided that they had a lot of money, so they're just going to remake the whole series. I don't exactly know what their format's going to be.
No, they're not. They're not touching on Lord of the Rings at all. It's all the Age of Man stuff beforehand when the rings were made.
Great, we're going to go ahead and cut this right out of the trilogy.
So
it's
full on
be
prequel.
Like
it's a full on. No, that only came out recently. I don't know if they're including Silmarillion, but it's full on prequel.
Wow.
We're also not going to spend a lot of time talking about The Hobbit in this podcast. I hope not.
Because it's not the Lord of the Rings. Because it's
not the Lord
separate,
of the Rings,
right? Yeah. So
right.
Tolkien wrote The Hobbit first,
Cool.
and then he wrote The Lord of the Rings. So we will
was
only be
hovering over
talking
that
about
buzzer
that
then.
trilogy. And
Yeah.
I think we're going to be specifically discussing the extended versions of these movies,
Yes.
which are the only versions
only
you should be
version.
watching. Tisk, 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 if you still haven't taken the journey and watched those. It is a different experience. It is the experience. It is the intended experience.
Right.
Although I
Well,
should point out, I found on iTunes today you can get all 3 normal length movies for $20.
don't do it.
Which
Don't
is
do
a
it.
Don't do it.
steal.
Lean into it, you
But
guys.
hold out for the extended
Go for it,
editions,
baby.
I mean,
well-
if you gotta do it, if you're short on life, sure.
Take
Well,
the
and
quest.
I'm double checking right now though because Netflix keeps doing this thing where they put the Lord of the
It's not every day.
Great, there goes my sound in the background. Netflix keeps doing the thing where they release the original cuts, the theatrical cuts, not the extended versions on Netflix. So that's a pain in the ass. But people are going to find it and think that's the movie. It's not. The Return of the King, the third movie in the trilogy, I think an hour is cut out of that movie.
Yeah, it's
including
an
a
hour
30-second opening sequence. That's awesome. A 30-minute opening sequence. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. We're also going to talk about the 16 seed on our bracket. We'll get to that in a little bit. And that is the Cornetto Trilogy.
By Edgar Wright and
Yes,
Simon
right,
Pegg.
direct.
Shaun of the Dead,
Yes.
Hot Fuzz, and The World's End.
So much fun.
And for
So
anyone
much
who doesn't
fun.
know what a cornetto is, it's basically the equivalent of a drumstick ice cream in the US.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. Great cast, great director. Everything about it's great. It is our 16 seed. Maybe it wouldn't be if we had rewatched all 16 trilogies ahead of time, but it has to go up against Lord of the Rings, which is the first thing we're going to talk about. Now, I know John's itching to get to it, but why don't we make him simmer and stew a little bit more? And Dave, why don't we start with you? I don't even know how you begin to talk about this trilogy,
No,
but
you know what? Let's just unleash John. Let's go for it.
Okay,
he's,
fine.
he's been sitting there chomping at the bit on this. Come
I'm
on.
drooling over here. Okay, so this franchise, this trilogy has been called many things. I think immediately when it first came out, people were already saying, "Oh, this is our generation's Star Wars," and things like that. I still think it has hung on for a lot of people. There's a lot of nostalgia attached to it because so many of us saw it when we were coming of age at some point, which is very meta considering so much of this story is about figuring out how to grow up and deal with the obstacles that are thrown to you and overcome all that stuff in the end. So
I felt more like Gandalf, but yeah.
yeah. Dave is the Gandalf to our group. I'll begin with this, and maybe you guys can start with this as well. I remember seeing Fellowship for the first time in the theater, and of course, this was not the extended cut. This was just the theatrical cut. So I was in whatever 7th, 8th, 9th grade. I can't really quite remember exactly how old I was, but I had not
was
read
so drunk.
The Lord of the Rings at the time. And I remember when I walked out of that theater, I already loved movies as much as any other kid. I'm definitely from that video store generation. So, all my friends loved watching movies in general. This was a very tangible feeling I had when I walked out of the theater. I remember thinking that I actually believed it was so good that I actually left the theater wanting to believe that Middle Earth was a real place. And knowing that I was so thankful that in a year or two, or whenever they were going to release Two Towers, the second one, that I was going to get to go back and live with them again. And I think that just speaks to the incredible achievement that this is. There are so many books made into movies.
It definitely had a profound effect on people. I remember, and just to bring it up quickly, The Hobbits, didn't really like them.
Yeah, drink.
But at the end of The Hobbits, when we got to the end,
Peter Jackson should drink for The Hobbits, actually.
I was sitting there at the end of The Hobbit, and I suddenly realized that we're not going to be visiting Middle Earth anymore, and I teared up.
And the only answer is
Like,
to start Lord of the Rings over again. That's
Yes.
that's the only answer. So yeah, I remember thinking that I just never had been affected by a story that way. So one, just story, but also filmmaking. Everyone knew the PR. They did such a good job. The way they filmed this, for anyone who really doesn't know, is one of the only times, I think the only time this has ever happened, where the initial pitch was to make it into a single movie, and then they said, "All right, no, fuck it. We want to do this, but we want you to make it into 3." That's what New Line came back with. And they were like, great. And then they funded them to film it all at once. So there was about a year and 7 months, I think, of nonstop filming or something like that. I can't remember the exact date. But anyway, so everyone kind of knew going into watching these for the first time that nothing like this had ever been done before. So we were going to see.
There's a very interesting story about how that came about.
Yeah.
The actual films.
Yeah, go ahead and tell that
because
story, actually. That's a good way to line it.
The Peter Jackson biography is amazing. It's worth a read. But they had contracted Weta to do King Kong. And the studio pulled the pin on King Kong after they'd already hired everyone for a year to do all the work on King Kong. And everybody freaked out. And they were like, shit, Weta Digital is going out of business. We can't afford to keep these people on for a year. We owe them all this money. What can we do? And Peter Jackson went away for a weekend with his crew and sat there and worked out, or I think it was like a week. They went and sat there and worked out a treatment for the Lord of the Rings movie, and that apparently flew through a fucking hurricane in a helicopter to get to the airport to take off to go over for a meeting with New Line, and sat down and gave him the pitch. And yeah, that's when New Line came back and went, "Can we make it 3 movies?"
Yeah, him and we'll give a franchise shout out to
and that actually saved What a Digital.
Yeah. It's beautiful. So, God, I love everything about this whole story. Fran Walsh is his wife and producing partner and co-writer. So they were very much a part of this.
She rode in the helicopter with him.
She was along for they do not exist without each other. So I think that's also really wonderful that they have a little fellowship that they continued working with throughout this entire process, and they still make movies together. There's just so much stuff here to unpack. Anyway,
I'm actually going to drink for not immediately remembering Fran Walsh's name.
Yeah, drink for Franny. Come on, Fran. God damn it, I love her.
I mean, she's an integral part of that team.
Oh yeah. So anyway, these movies they had a great impact on me. I do not think, I'll just say one more general thing, and then we'll pass it off to Jeff. There are so many times everyone has had this feeling on Earth. If you watch movies at all, when some books that you love or famous stories or famous books get made and adapted for film or television, it is almost always a letdown. There's another franchise we'll come to later on where we can debate that if this has been done as successfully another time, but almost everyone who loves the story Lord of the Rings and who loves the book Lord of the Rings will happily admit that especially the extended versions are a wonderful, wonderful adaptation of this story. You feel like you have 2 mediums to get the entire experience with. So part of the fun of this is that there's just so much hours of footage. There's so much to live in that you really do feel like you get to go on the journey with them. It's not just getting to tap in and have a good fun time with the movie you like, or you can pull one out totally out of context. You can do that as well. But if you take the journey, it literally feels like a journey. It feels like it does in the book. It takes a long time to get through it, and it's so rewarding. So yeah, anyway, so that's my intro. What do you think?
We're not by any means saying it's a perfect film. Like, there are some dodgy effect shots in there. But it definitely, as far as the storytelling and the journey, I'm totally on board with that.
Oh, yeah.
You know what's interesting too is that, speaking of what you're saying with the effect shot, there's one motion of the camera in that final chase sequence out of when the demon is chasing them out.
Which
very
movie?
famous scene
Fellowship?
of the first, of Fellowship, yeah, where it's like as they're moving up, it's because Gandalf is how tall? He's supposed to be 3 times taller than the hobbits or something. So there's a weird transition that feels a little clunky. I feel like by the 3rd movie, the technology kept improving. Did you catch that too? I feel like it's fun to watch it in sequence because the first movie does feel like a first movie in sequence. To me. Anyway, honestly, I put that off to the side though. That's just like a big picture thing.
No, that's totally true. You can watch technology grow in real time with these people.
Yeah.
With these films. It's fucking trippy.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, that didn't work. Let's invent something else for next week.
Yep. And once again,
like,
it's just so meta. I mean, they were having to do that in the journey as well.
I've done the walkthrough Weta. These guys are amazing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you did the Weta tour. Yeah. What I would say about this movie is I really enjoy like transcendent film, like the kind of thing that you watch and you're taken to that time and place, wherever that is, whenever it is, right? It doesn't happen very often. I thought Game of Thrones did it for 6 seasons and then certainly did not after that. But like this movie is the ultimate. You watch this and you are, when they go to Hobbiton at the beginning, and Frodo is reading or writing underneath a tree, and then he sort of sees Gandalf come in, and he runs after Gandalf, and the music is playing. You transport, and it is like I want to spend more time in the Shire, which unfortunately this movie, they just because of circumstances, they sort of have to leave the Shire quicker than in the book. In the book, they spend a little bit more time there, it's really fun. The way they talk, just little things like they don't say 111, they say 11, like little tiny things like that add up after a while where you just kind of get sucked in. Even the singing, they're constantly singing all the time. They're eating and smoking pipes the whole movie. Like within seconds, it just makes sense, and it seems like a place that you want to go. And the real achievement in this is, as John was talking talking about at the beginning, they had a year to plan for pre-production. They had a full year. So they literally planted Hobbiton. So that land is not CGI'd really at all. They actually planted plants that would be colorful, in bloom, that would make it look as picturesque as possible. All the exteriors of the houses, like Bilbo's houses with the weird giant round door, all of that was actually built into the ground. This wasn't just a set that was built up and destroyed later. You can go today, and it is still in the exact same form that it was then. It is stunning. It's picturesque. It's
one of
just
us has
a delight.
actually gone there, isn't that?
Yeah, Dave.
Right?
Yeah, I was there last year. I walked around Hobbiton. They have actual horticulturists who work there. They work on site.
Wow.
These guys are like protecting the natural fauna that are there, but they're also growing all the stuff. The bar, like the Green Dragon Inn,
Yeah.
is for real. It works. It's a working bar. You can get beer there. Is actually the finale of the tour if you go. The only thing I think that isn't still real is the tree on the hill above Bag End.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Oh man.
Jesus.
But yeah, I mean, but Jeff, even just
and-
what you said
yeah.
right there, like that is just an immediate proof that the storytelling is working. Because how badly do you want to stay in the Shire? What are we fighting for? By the time you leave the Shire, you don't want to have to go on this journey, but you have to save that thing that you want to get back to. You're already right there. Just a general thing real fast, just because I know we're going to be bringing it up. That was another perfect example. I've heard Peter Jackson talk one time about how passionate he is. Clearly, he's a very, very, very intelligent, innovative filmmaker. So he does not take anything lightly. He takes himself very seriously, and he takes their work very seriously. I heard this interview one time, though, where he was saying that he feels like he's on a bit of a crusade to defend escapism. And I think this story is a really perfect example. I mean, he's not just adapting some tale. This is one of the greatest fantasy stories ever told. One of, for a lot of people, I think it's one of their favorite stories ever told. It's just got all the ingredients of the hero's journey that you're looking for. So we had that to work with. But just in general, trying to stay true and to try to prove to people that it doesn't have to be based in spectacle and sentiment. Escapism doesn't have to be based in those two things. It can be based on all of the real elements of the struggles of life, and it'll be heightened even further than that. I don't hate Steven
I'll give
Spielberg,
you an example of
but I don't hate like those bigger spectacle filmmakers. Hold on, I don't hate those guys by any means, but there are some times that I feel like I'm watching major Hollywood productions that are clearly meant for escapism, and I can have a lot of fun in the theater. That is still something we should all be trying to do. I like having fun in the theater. I do enjoy the spectacle, but why is this movie or these movies different? This stuff gives me all of that, plus something so real that every time I watch it, I am a little more changed because of it. I'm not just having fun. I am struggling with them, and I'm having fun, and I get to enjoy the final catharsis of actually pulling through with all of those people. So hats off for the crusade against escapism. Dave?
I feel like we need a little bell for John.
For escapism, excuse me, not against.
To give you an idea of how detailed Peter Jackson can be, when you are walking around Hobbiton, I really suggest you go. Every hut has a different job, like a different person who works in the village lives there. And what is outside their hobbit hole depends on what their job is.
Yeah.
Right down to the town drunk.
Yeah.
They're all there. Sam's house has its own little mythology where he has two doors. And the reason he has two doors is because in Hobbiton there's a window tax. So he did it to keep the taxes down. There's a whole mythology built up around just this set location.
Wow.
Oh my God, it's so good.
So
And by the way, we're go ahead. Hobbiton is like the first 10 minutes of the first movie too. I'm exaggerating, but we didn't even get to Sauron and Saruman and really what is happening. We didn't talk about Cate Blanchett. We didn't talk about Viggo Mortensen. We didn't talk about
The real star of the show, Andy Serkis.
Andy Serkis, Jesus. Well, that was his audition. Like how did he possibly?
Yeah.
Also, I mean, I've seen these many times as many people have, and if you haven't, please immediately do so. I say every night, watch the first movie. The next night, watch the second movie, and the next night, watch all three movies in 3 nights. Some people do it in the same day. That's a little bit of an overkill. I say in 3 nights, do the hero's journey, watch the extended editions, and then go back and watch the extended features, because the features are so great. There are so many incredible things. There was one time where there was a rainstorm outside, so they filmed a scene from the third movie, even though they were still working on the first movie, between Sam and Frodo right at the Mountain of Doom, like right at the end of the third movie. And they only got Sam's coverage. They only got Sam. And then the next day, the weather cleared up and they went back to their film schedule. And they didn't film Elijah. Sorry. Elijah Woods.
Eliza Wood.
Elijah Wood. They didn't film Elijah Wood's Cross for a year. So the same scene was actually filmed a year apart. That is how detailed they were. They already had the third movie's costume, makeup, because now the makeup person has to make sure the makeup's identical. They had this stuff to a T years in advance. It is so perfect. And I'm just going to give a shout out because we're going to be talking about this movie again. I have a feeling, and I can do games of like, who is your favorite? Like, who do you want to be? Do you want to be Liz Tyler? Oh my God, Liv Tyler. Jesus Christ, I can't talk.
Do
you want to be an elf? Do you want to be a man? Do you want to... Is the second one better than the third movie? Whatever. We can talk about this forever. We probably will. What I would say about this trilogy is this is the best paced trilogy, I think, on our list. There are obviously other great pacings. I'm sure Star Wars will come up. The second movie's always darkest in trilogies, right? The second movie always changes and always gets a little deeper. There's something like the Darth Vader theme wasn't actually really introduced. The Imperial theme, the Imperial March, wasn't really introduced until the second Star Wars. Like in this movie, the score changes and it does get darker in the second movie. But 1, 2, 3, the pacing between these movies, because at certain points, the story fractures. The characters have to split up, right? They're really only all together in one scene in the first movie, and then they all go on their separate ways. So sometimes you have like 5 or 6 different storylines that you're jumping around to, and they are all paced perfectly, not identical pacing, but it's like the way it comes together. You have to watch it big picture, like macro.
How do they do that, dude? How does it? How is it? It is. You're right. It's like the pacing. I guess pacing is the right way to say it. These movies can be watched out of context, and you can still say, God damn it, they're all great on their own. But you're right; they also work perfectly together if you watch them seamlessly, one after the other. It's just a perfect
they work
balance.
Off story beats.
It's never like in series. Like I love 24, for instance. I love the series 24. But when you have 24 hours, some character is just gonna sleep for 6 hours, right? And this story, every character is doing something pivotal to the story at all times. And when you think you might have forgotten a character, they come back in and they're doing something important. And you're like, oh, that's where they are. And then a pivotal scene happens. It's like it is the bar. It is the bar for how to do that. Again, the Star Wars pacing is perfect.
Even the pacing of the film, like when you think it's when it's all just getting a little bit too much, it's like a dance party. They bring you in with the chill out. Here's some sweeping New Zealand scenery. Calm down and let's go to the next thing.
And he's Phil Jackson. Oh my God, guys, what is wrong? Peter Jackson. Phil Jackson has a lot of championships. Except he ruined the Knicks. Oh, no, sorry, that was James Dolan. Okay, Peter Jackson said, it's like everybody who's from New Zealand thinks this is the Lord of the Rings. And I was like, I don't know if that's true, but thank God you did, because this is the best... I don't know if it was actually B-cam. I have no idea how many cameras they had going on at once. There were days where Peter Jackson was like 4 different locations.
Killed it, dude.
That second unit, here's what I want to know. Here's who I want to talk to. I want to talk to the labeler. I want to talk to the person whose job it was to label this footage. It was like... beautiful mountains with spiky peaks and a little white on the top. Peaky, beautiful mountains with aqua blue water underneath. Like, I don't know how they labeled it all, but especially that third movie, when they're following the beacons in the third movie, it's like... I mean, New Zealand's just like, okay, we don't have a tourism budget. This is our tourism budget. It's done for us.
They don't need one anymore.
Yeah, did they go to the fjords though?
That's the funny thing. Like I went all around New Zealand, North and South Island, and I can tell you every single place I stayed. If you Airbnb in New Zealand, you can open a drawer somewhere and those DVDs are sitting in it.
Yes, I mean as they should. It's
they
just
are
another.
So proud
it's
of
just
this
another
movie.
One of those things. Like I feel like, I mean, we're all we all have theatrical backgrounds as well. We've been in the performing arts for a long time. Anyone who's involved in the arts knows that every now and then there is a magical production. If it's a play, if it's a television show or a film or whatever, where you can't even pick the best part about it because everything is firing on all cylinders. This is just one of those franchises. You're pointing out all the right stuff. Like no one else could have made this. It had to be Peter and Fran Jackson in New Zealand at this time, under those financial circumstances, with the precipice of technology that they were on, so they would push it with each of the films. By the end of the in the middle of the filming of the third one. So I know they filmed them a little bit out of order, but basically towards the end of the second year of filming, Intel got in touch with Peter to let him know that Weta and his production company at the time had the largest computing power on planet Earth when they were in the middle of filming and post-production Return of the King. That is awesome. That is awesome.
And that's also because every single frame of that film went in the computers.
I mean,
there's not a single frame of that film that wasn't digitally
Dave,
touched.
I mean, just talk really quickly, dude. How much did this movie change everything for digital? How much did this change everything?
And mocap.
I mean, mocap it definitely set the bar for. Like, once they introduced Gollum and people saw what was possible, and then they saw how they did it, and like that set the bar for motion capture to come.
And just to clarify, again, I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of these specifics as this movie comes back up and stuff. But one of my favorite things about Weta in Lord of the Rings, especially, is so obvious, is that they work with miniatures a lot.
Yes.
Right. So
they
like
do a lot of creature effects.
When they are flying through, after one of those scenes with Gandalf on the top of the tower when he's been held prisoner in Fellowship, and they drop down and they go under Isengard where the Orcai are being dug out, and they're flying through that cavern and everything. They built an entire miniature set for that. So it's half of it is actual 3D, half it's a 3D camera. And I'm sure a lot of it is mocap as well, and like different digital effects. But there is something very unique about the special effects work and watching the transition from the first to the second to the third and the evolution of the technology. It's like you can witness it in real time.
Yeah, it's like literally you walk off set and you walk into your own personal effects army and go, hey, how are we going to make this? And every single person in the room is a genius.
I mean, yeah.
So it's going to come out amazing.
It's just like the stories of ILM. It's very similar to hearing about the Lucas effects when they were working at ILM and they were just making it as they went. And I mean, honestly, like whenever you read about old special effects artists and like Golden Age of Hollywood and silent era, these people were just inventors. They were literally just scientists and physicists and inventors that they hired to help them think up new ways to film effects. And this is just such a good example. Yeah. Creating
the other thing that came out of this was CG crowd motion. I believe actually developed their own plugin where it would create an army out of 2 or 3 models, but those models would react to what was around them. So if something bumped into it, it would react. If it came upon a tree trunk, it would jump over it or go around it. Dude. Like it basically AI'd an army.
That first shot when I think it's in Two Towers before they go to Helm's Deep when what's the assistant guy that had the Rohirrim King under his spell, and then he's back at Sauron's place. He's at Isengard, and he's like, "But my lord, there is no such army." And then Sauron walks out.
I can only see him as Suda from Voyager,
or the guy from Deadwood. He's so good in that. But anyway, when they walk out on that balcony, and you see 10,000 orcs and Orcai in league right there. I mean, that had to have been a special effects shot. And it just
some of it was the army.
That's awesome. I knew the Helm's Deep was a lot of that was actually practical. I knew they had like 300 people on set all the time dressed in Orcai outfits, but it's just absolutely incredible. We're sitting here talking about the special effects, but I mean, it's just we could talk about any aspect of it because it's also good.
The special effects just rose to the occasion and complemented what was already a great story.
All right, one more. I'm going to throw in one more.
Take away from it.
What do you guys think? This is my favorite film score. I listen to a lot of film score music. I love classical music in general. It's not only is it Howard Shore's best score, I think it safely ranks in top 5.
It's in the top 2. I think Star Wars still probably has the belt, but then again, they don't introduce if the Imperial March was in the first movie, there'd be no contest. But I still think, I mean. That's 1 and 2 for me. I don't. There are a couple others that are good, but I think that's 1 and 2.
Lord of the Rings, Superman, Star Wars. Like
I put Superman 3rd on those 2, but
I mean, that says something pretty huge, right? The only thing that we could even compare to it is John Williams' opuses. I mean, that's pretty damn good. Howard Shore.
We'll wrap this up in a minute, but I have 2 other things. One was Sean Astin at the end of the movie. When they finally get back to Hobbiton.
Oh my god!
And he sees his daughter.
His actual real life daughter?
It wasn't in the first few takes. It was a different actress. And then to get the reaction that he wanted on like the 3rd or 4th take, Peter Jackson substituted his actual daughter that he hadn't seen in 7 months.
Wow. Well,
so
And
this-
she
I'm
ran
back.
out.
These are like
Yeah,
those
what do-
war. These are like those war videos where the person comes home from war at a basketball game, and
Yeah. So that look of joy on his face is absolutely real.
We should mention that as well. Obviously, we talked about the fact that they were filming these back to back. I listened to an actors on actor interview. I don't know if you guys ever watched those with the Hollywood Reporter, and it's just an actor interviewing another
Yeah.
actor. And I saw Ian McKellen and Kate Blanchett's,
ah,
and they mentioned to each. Ian was like, "Well, we met in Middle Earth," and she was like, "Yes, we did." They lived in New Zealand the entire time this was happening. So the actors,
Yeah.
the principal actors especially, it's not that they were in every single scene together. So it's not like they saw each other every single day, but they lived
yeah.
in different parts of New Zealand together as a part of this entire crew with everyone. They were all on this journey together. And it's just so, I just think that's just so beautiful that they had the opportunity to not have to go back and forth between other jobs, to commit mentally and emotionally and physically to this enormous endeavor.
The sweetest part of the watching the behind the scenes, the special features, is they all stayed for each other's final takes. So there's a scene where Frodo's writing in the book at the end, and he's basically leaving the space for Sam, and he has to tell him. And Vigo and Billy Boyd, and they're all there in the background because they're all watching each other's take. It is
That's so good. It's so
like,
emotional.
Also, I hope this survives this week. I hope this trilogy, this franchise, can beat out the Cornetto series, because I would love to talk about some things like, for instance, Viggo Mortensen apparently was so well versed in nature. He's such a natural guy that he would just like get on a horse and basically be like, "See you guys tomorrow," and then he would just go out into the wilderness and just come back in a day or two.
Yeah, he didn't have a house. He lived in the trees.
He bought. I read one of
Ranger,
my
dude.
favorite stats
Strider.
is one of my favorite stats is he bought the horse. I think he bought Eowyn's horse and gave it to Eowyn's stunt double as a gift.
Aw.
That's
Like,
neat.
who does that? What actor gives another actor a gift for, usually like the studio or especially these movies all made $900 million a piece, which in today's money would be like 1.5 billion, because this was almost 20 years ago now. This movie, think about like all the Marvel movies, and the Marvel movies knew how much money they can make because of how well these did in the box office. 3 years in a row, basically nearing $1 billion 20 years ago, and the actors were giving each other presents on set. I mean, that is just.
Do we want to talk real quickly
what-
about the actors, or do we want to move on?
We should move on, but it wouldn't be a Lord of the Rings discussion if we didn't bring up Giant Eagle Gate. The one criticism that everyone has of this is, why didn't they just fly the eagles to Mordor?
Right.
Fuck you.
Yeah, that is not
Yeah,
okay.
it's
So
about the
that's
journey.
the answer to that.
Tolkien refers to this as a eucatastrophe. He has gotten tons of criticism about this in his career. Why didn't they just in the first place? That's the whole fucking point of this journey. By the end, if you make it to Aragorn turning around and saying for Frodo, and you don't understand that the entire reason we went on this was because of the faith in the cause, that there was no choice but to move forward. The Eagles would not have needed to come help if there wasn't a reason to come help. It's not because somebody asked them casually at the very beginning of this. It wasn't a preemptive thing. They joined the fight at the very end. So I feel like it's almost like a manifestation. I don't know.
And also, I'm
Also, I
Sauron.
love-
I'm a giant flaming eye hovering in the sky. I'm looking for my ring. Oh, what's that in the horizon? Giant fucking eagles. Boom, end of humanity.
Yeah.
He wins.
Also,
you can see them a mile away.
Yeah.
I love the Harry Potter movies. I really do. They are on our list. We are going to talk about them. J.K. Rowling borrowed/stole as much as possible from Lord of the Rings. First things first, Dumbledore is Gandalf, but also Fawkes, the Magic Phoenix. You could make that exact same argument. Well, if we have a Magic Phoenix, then why don't we just use the Magic Phoenix? His tears bring people back to life. He can evaporate you into midair. Why don't we use the Phoenix more? And it's because the exact same thing. Help is always there for those who.
Yeah.
Want it,
The
seek
Phoenix
it,
is
and
like,
ask for it.
that hurts, motherfucker. I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, but that is the truth. So the same thing in Harry Potter applies to here. There's no way. Don't give me that Eagles bullshit.
Yeah, you have to go on.
Also, they wouldn't have reunited the
it's
planet. The Eagles wouldn't have reunited.
This is
the
the last thing
planet.
we'll say. Maybe this is where we should stop for this. It's the tales that really matter. It's at the end of number 2. It is a famous passage from the book. It's a famous scene from the movie when shit is going to hell around Frodo and Sam when they're stuck in what's that middle city that's falling at the time? Damn it, I can't remember the name of that town. I'll remember
Yeah, I
later.
can't remember
And
it.
everything is just going to shit, and they're cutting back and forth from the other stories. Everyone's back is against the wall. People are dying all around them, and Sam gives this monologue about the tales that really matter. And he has this realization that the only reason the good stories exist is because all of the heroes never gave up, especially when they needed to push forward against the odds. Again, it's just so meta. Tolkien knew exactly what he was doing, but he's right, which is why these secondary world tales are such a perfect, the escapism, to bring it back to that, they're such a perfect vehicle for humans to deal with all of the aspects of life. You are going to achieve what you want only if you go against the odds and you fucking go for it.
We're going to wrap this up and come back and talk about 3 movies John hasn't written a thesis on.
I'm crying over here. It's the tales that really matter, you guys. It's the tales.
All right. And we're back.
We're back.
We're back, baby.
So we certainly hated Lord of the Rings. Man, what a piece of shit. I'm kidding. Oh yeah, we didn't give a parental advisory, but I don't even think we've cursed yet. So just so you know, we're probably going to curse.
No, I cursed.
Oh, yeah, Dave
I
did.
cursed like a motherfucker. What are you talking about?
That's right. Okay,
I don't
cool.
fucking curse. Okay.
All right. So parental advisory, you're warned 30 minutes into the episode. So we are now going to talk about our 16 seed, the Cornetto Trilogy, which, as we mentioned earlier in the episode, all 3 episodes were directed by Edgar Wright, written by Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright. All 3 trilogies basically
and Nick Frost contributed.
Nick Frost contributed, and he basically plays the sidekick in every movie. There are a lot of people who make an appearance in all 3 movies. Martin Freeman is one of them for sure. His role starts out really small, and by the 3rd movie it gets bigger. Anyway,
Bill Nighy turns up, I believe, in most of them.
Who does?
Bill Nighy.
Bill Nighy's definitely... Is he in Hot Fuzz? He's definitely in Shaun of the Dead and World's End.
Is Eddie Marzan in more than one?
Eddie Marzan. Anyway, so we're going to talk about the 3 movies, which are 2004's Shaun of the Dead, 2007's Hot Fuzz, and 2013's The World's End. All comedies, and the only real thing they have in common besides the creators and the creative team and some of the cast is they all eat the Cornetto ice cream, or at least mention the Cornetto ice cream in the 3 movies.
Actually, there's a couple more things as well. So in every single movie, someone tries to jump over a fence and fails.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
There's a lot of running gags in these movies.
Yes.
It becomes fun to look for the running gag.
Exactly.
There's always a group that are doubles. There's always,
Right. Mm-hmm. So we're going to look at them as a trilogy. We're not going to look at them as individual movies, although the watchability and rewatchability of these movies is very high. So if you're bored, you want a good British action comedy spoof, possibly otherworldly
that's
thing.
the other warning we should give. This is British comedy.
This is British comedy, yeah.
British
so
comedy.
who would like to kick off the discussion of this trilogy? I don't know how you do it without separating movies, but we'll see. Who wants to dive in?
Do it, Dave. You love this.
I'll dive in.
Great.
Like, Edgar Wright is hands down one of my favorite directors ever. Like Scott Pilgrim is top 1 of my
He's fucking awesome.
favorite movies. It's my favorite. I will pretty much invest money in anything the man makes.
He's never made a bad movie
now or in the future. No, he hasn't. This is way on the other end of the scale. This is an absolutely ridiculous homage to 3 different genres of films.
Yeah.
And like they cover the zombie film. They cover. I'm not going to give away the other. Everyone knows Shaun of the Dead's a zombie film, but World's End has a twist in the middle of it where it just goes sideways. Yeah. And Hot Fuzz is the same. It's like a build to it. They get to it, but like I think my favorite is the World's End twist. I love Shaun of the Dead. That's probably my favorite of the 3, and then it would be World's End after that. These guys researched the hell out of this. Like they sat there and watched so many cop films. They watched so many zombie movies. They watched so much sci-fi to just be able to take the piss out of all of it. They basically took what they saw in these movies and accentuated it to ridiculous proportions. Mm-hmm. And in one case, added a bub crawl, Yeah.
It's actually, so they all were around. By they all, I mean Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg, who's the lead in all 3 movies, and Nick Frost, who's basically the top supporting character in all 3 movies. They're all around the age of 30 when they make Shaun of the Dead, and they had all already been on, I think Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg especially were on a sitcom called Smashed.
Yes.
It's called Yes, I think it was called Smashed, like 99 to 2000. Spaced. 99 to
Spaced. Yeah,
2001. And then they started developing and writing Shaun of the Dead right afterwards. £4 million for Shaun of the Dead, £8 million for Hot Fuzz. And Hot Fuzz was made not too long after Shaun of the Dead. And you would think that was a pretty big success, pretty big surprise success, made tens of millions of dollars around the world. And they still only got an £8 million budget. And they just made the use out, they made the best out of it. But there is some storytelling in this that is beyond what most comedies are. So first of all, Simon Pegg's the main character in all of these movies, and it follows him like perfectly. I would say American comedy, for the most part, it's all about scenes, it's all about lines, it's all about gags, it's all about crazy scenarios. This is it's a much more slow burn. So we follow Simon Pegg's travel sequences whenever he's moving. The one from Shaun of the Dead is actually what really got the movie famous, to me at least. I remember he basically goes out in the zombie apocalypse, and he has a lot of personal stuff that's going on that's introduced early in the movie, and he doesn't realize the zombie apocalypse is going on around him, and he's going to get the Cornettos for his roommate Nick Frost, which is really funny. That
he's hungover as shit.
He's very hungover, and he's walking around. I mean, there's a scene in the movie where they're like, "Oh, why didn't you guys get a room?" And he doesn't realize that it's not people having sex; it's actually a zombie eating another person. So it's just a whole spoof on it. It's an action movie. It's not about the lines. It's not about the jumpy, laughing, like hysterically, like milk coming out of your nose stuff. It is just it's impossible to take your eye off it because you're with them the entire way.
Also, one fair warning: once you watch this movie, you will never be able to hear Queen's "Don't Stop Me Now."
Yeah,
without thinking of people laying into zombies with pool cues.
That's Shaun of the Dead. There's "Don't Stop Me Now," and then it ends with "Ooh, you're making me live."
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of good Queen songs in Shaun of the Dead. I don't know how they had the money for all of those Queen songs on a £4 million
you're
budget.
Right.
But
This is all three of these movies. Why do they work so well when they're comedies? And I think it just begs the question: what makes a comedy more than just a scene or two to quote with your friends after you've seen the movie?
Right.
All three of these movies are about growing up. They're about dealing with how to become a better version of yourself. Simon Pegg's character, in different ways in each of them, is resisting change. He's resisting maturity. He's resisting moving on from his parents in Shaun of the Dead. His girlfriend wants him to grow up. Hot Fuzz, he was picked on all the time when he was a kid, so he became a cop that is, a fucking asshole because he didn't have any friends who helped him mature. It's about him maturing with the help of making friends in the new small town in Hot Fuzz. And The World's End is literally about him desperately hanging on to his high school years and his golden years with his buddies who have all moved on, and about him ultimately having to face the fact that he can't keep living in the past. So it's a good example of, just like everything else in all of art, all the elements have to be firing together. The writing is strong. The acting is really, really, really good. If you didn't these movies are not camp. I think there's I do want to make that.
No, they're entirely genuine.
Yeah, honestly, the reason they work is because they know that they have made a filmmaking wink to you. They want you to have fun. They're going to have fun. They're going to put some fun, crazy Queen songs in the background. You're going to be laughing, and you're going to be enjoying all the amazing editing transitions, all the amazing, hilarious action sequences. But at the core of it, characters are taking it seriously. So it is that satire? Are these just really good satirical versions of the zombie movie, the crime cop movie, and then the the sci-fi apocalyptic movie kind of thing? They take them so seriously that you allow yourself to, I don't know if it's you or if they do it for you, but by the end of each of these, there is always a final scene where Simon's character has to realize, I can't be like this anymore. And you actually are rooting for him. You actually do care. And that's why I think these movies are more than just all the fun elements. That Edgar Wright is clearly a brilliant technical filmmaker. I mean, he knows what he's doing. He knows how to use all the special effects, how to use practical effects. He's a wonderful editor. I love how they cut all of these movies. Whenever they move from one place to another, the quick the quick editing.
He's like that World's End. Yeah, World's End.
Fucking amazing. They do it every single time, and it's just so amazing. But at the core of it, I just love what's happening to Simon Pegg. What's that?
The fast cutting breakfast montage in Shaun of the Dead, like that sort of technique has mimicked the world over now.
And the best is in Shaun of the Dead when, again, he's avoiding the zombie apocalypse that you, the audience, knows is happening, but not him. They scroll through the television channels, and all of the different channels in sequence, he keeps saying next, but they're all explaining one complete sentence that there's a zombie apocalypse happening, but he keeps changing it. So that is like British comedy at its best, where it's funny and it's hilarious, but it's not what an American comedy would do is turn it on Simon Pegg and say, do something funny. This was like Edgar Wright's like, I got you. We're building up the storytelling. We're keeping true to the character where he's being delusional about this, but we want to catch the audience up. It's great. And I love the opening sequence of Hot Fuzz for exactly what you were talking about, John, where it takes itself so seriously that it turns from like a police training montage into just like a regular old cop movie where he's arresting everybody and he's like in charge. And it's all these incredible sequences. And then at the end, he's immediately getting transferred out of London because he's too good at being a cop.
He's too good at it.
By the time, and it's so funny because it's Martin Freeman, who we all know Martin Freeman, and he keeps asking for more people because he wants to talk to a supervisor, and he finally talks to Bill Nighy, who basically so nothing about the opening sequence is a joke. Nothing. There's not one moment where he like drops his gun. Nothing.
Until in that scene when he's like, "You want me to get the lead inspector in here? You're gonna make me get him all the way down here." And lead inspector?
He's in there in 10 seconds. Yeah, and it's Bill Nighy, and Bill Nighy just goes, "Look, your arrest count is 400% higher than the next person's arrest count. We have to transfer you just because you make us look bad." And then there is the most depressing sequence where, again, an American movie, and I've seen other videos and people talk about this. This isn't the most original thought about Edgar Wright. An American comedy would just show like some B-roll of a train leaving, and then maybe some B-roll of the new town, and then him like at the pub of the new town because it's all about like the actor and the character. Him getting on a train with his stuff and then getting off the train and then sitting on a bench while he waits to transfer to a new train. The fast cutting, his like the close-ups of his face while this is happening. It's like by the time he gets there, you're caught up. You're sitting there with him, and then you don't want to be there. And then that crazy lady who's basically he's checking into his hotel, and she goes, "Oh, it's you again." And he's like, "Hi, I'm here." And she's like, "Oh yeah, you've always been here." And she looks up and she goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were my husband." And it's like, like after you see this whole training montage, he basically goes in a maybe haunted hotel. It's like. I know that's a weird hint into this movie. I love Hot Fuzz. I know it's the least like. It's probably the least successful out of the three, mostly because it's too long, mostly because it turns into Man on Fire where the last 30 minutes is awesome. I know. Yeah, I know, and I know I'm rambling. All of these movies, what I would say, specifically talking about Hot Fuzz, because the action sequences in Hot Fuzz are awesome. There are some brutal deaths in Hot Fuzz, and they do them quickly so that they're funny, but it's like, they're spoofing the genre, but it's like it's just a little bit too long, Hot Fuzz. But all of these movies have incredible deaths. They have incredible action sequences. It's really, really cool. They're all worth watching. Hot Fuzz was my favorite for the first 30 minutes. And then I wish. I mean,
we can talk about it. I'm probably going to focus more on World's End because I feel like that's the one a lot of people haven't.
Especially now because you can't do bar crawls. How much during coronavirus do you want to do a bar crawl? This is like the perfect way of getting out of Corona would be doing this bar crawl. Sorry, Dave. Back to you.
Somebody posted a meme online earlier today where they've just put a bottle of alcohol in every room of their house, and that's their bar crawl now. Oh, which I think is a great idea. But did you pick up on Bill Nighy's cameo in World's End?
No,
because he's never on screen. Every single voice on the phone is Bill Nighy.
Okay. I was like, whose voice is that? I kept. I was like, that guy has to be famous.
As soon as I heard it, I'm like, what? And, yeah.
Wait, so everybody knows Bill Nighy's the guy from the what's the famous Christmas story? I feel it in my fingers. Yeah. I feel it in my toes. That's Bill Nighy. Just so everybody knows.
Like, Bill Nighy is so cool. He literally phoned it in.
That was Edgar's pitch to him for this last role.
Yeah.
Before we get into World's End, because we'll start talking about it, another thing I love so much about these movies is that I have a brother-in-law who is British, and so I've gotten to go over there once now and hang out with them. Obviously, my sister has been with him, so I feel like I am, through osmosis and through getting to know him better, learning more about the cliches and the actual realities of like British culture. The British pub culture is something that is very, very, very real, and it is alive and well in all of these movies. It is a big part because he tends to take these everyman people. He tends to work with lower, working class folks who are constantly getting wrapped up in that kind of lifestyle where they have their job, but they're kind of unsatisfied, and they live for the pub, and they live for this end of the day thing. And a lot of them are working through creating a life that is more than just that. A lot of them is about trying to rise above that. And yet it's so well done that you kind of want to just go with them to the pub for at least one night before you guys move on too far. Let's go have some fucking fun and let's go for it. So yeah, World's
also
End.
do not fuck around in a British pub, because as they point out in one of the pubs he tries to go into, because basically the storyline of this is they try to rekindle their youth pub crawl, and it's 12 bars. And it's
the Golden Mile.
Called the Golden Mile, and they get into one of the pubs, and he gets refused service because he's been banned for life from when he was a teenager.
For like 20 something
and
years.
his photo is on the wall.
Yeah, shout out to the young actors who plays the young version of Martin Freeman, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost. Like, shout out to the young
Yeah,
They
that
all
was
did
pretty
a good
good.
job. I loved they have the first two pubs they walk into, and again, I've only been over there once, but last year I was walking into some pubs with my first of all, I got to throw this anecdote in there. One night we were we were crawling around to different pubs in London, me and my brother-in-law, and we passed Edgar Wright on the street in between bars. And he was like, there goes Edgar Wright. And I was like, oh my God, that was Edgar Wright. And him and his buddy were drinking a beer in the street, walking and talking. I was like, this is just too perfect. So anyway, they walk into the first two pubs and they're like, God, it's like deja vu, right? And they're the exact same pub, because there is this movement that seems to be happening right now that a lot of Brits are complaining about, where they're trying to make them a little more family friendly and franchising. They called it Starbucking. I thought that was so fucking funny. They're the exact same fucking pub. So true.
Yeah, it's so fun. I also love that there's so much inside baseball you could get into with these films in hindsight that were really prevalent at the time. It's funny now that Martin Freeman was one of the biggest movie stars of the year this came out, because this was during the Hobbit trilogy, and it was during Sherlock that The World's End came out, and he wasn't even a big role in the first two movies. By the time The World's End came out, so they basically made him like a stuffy businessman that was too cool for school, that really didn't want to do the thing because he had outgrown it and he was better than them. Meanwhile, like, he's literally Bilbo Baggins in one of the biggest movies in the world at the same time. You get Jim Broadbent, who at this point had just done the last Harry Potter movies for Hot Fuzz. That was 2007, so it was like right as the Harry Potter movie was coming to an end. And then Bill Nye was doing the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy. So you have these people just trying to have a ball on set. But yeah,
that's when you know you've got a good team, though. When you no matter how famous they get, no matter how good year they're having, you say, "Hey, I'm doing this. Do you want to come and they jump."
Yeah,
and that's part of
and they commit 100%.
Without a doubt, that's part of the appeal, isn't it? Like we get to see this like little theater troupe like reoccur with each other, and they're clearly having much fun. Dude, they are loving it.
So David Bradley, who plays Filch in the Harry Potter series, and he plays Walder Frey in Lord of the Rings series, he is in he's in Hot Fuzz and at World's End and The World's End. Has he been playing basically like old like, how is he not dead Brits for 30 years? I mean, in him and Hot Fuzz, he does this weird device where he actually needs a translator. So Nick Frost is translating. Nick Frost is translating to Simon Pegg because the words he's saying are inaudible. He literally just says sound out loud. What a dream as an actor. You show up and you're like, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, oh, what he's saying is that bomb has been deactivated. It's like, he is so funny. And he's in both movies.
Again, yeah, this is a guy that's been in Harry Potter. He also stood
in the middle of Harry Potter
William
during
Hartnell
this.
as the first Doctor as well in the recent specials, because we lost William Hartnell, so he stood in and took over the role. This is a guy who could have almost any job he wants, and he's playing a B-role in Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg, Nick Frost's film. Like, these guys I think could make a phone call to anyone in England. Go, hey, you wanna? And you wouldn't even finish the sentence.
Yeah. And which again tells you that it's more than just a comedy. Like, these movies are gonna live. There's that phrase about, to have a really good drama, you need 3 amazing scenes. To have a really wonderful comedy, you need at least 1 hilarious scene. Not only are there more than 1 hilarious scene or moment in each of these, they're all brilliantly comedic. They're all funny, but they're so much
Yeah.
more than that. We're gonna come back and rewatch these, and we're gonna encourage everyone to go rewatch these because
watch
there's
these movies.
more than
There's
just
so many
laughs.
great throwaways.
Yeah. Wait,
Yeah.
so let's break it down for people who.
Also,
Sorry, Dave. Go ahead. I'll do this.
World's End. I'm coming back to the studies. The fucking fight choreography.
I know.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
So the action scene
And this is one of those few films where they were lucky in that when you show a study's face on screen, you don't immediately die in the next scene because you can come back. But it was like the fights were solid and like I've lost words.
No, for sure.
And a lot of the stunnies.
Jump
a
in,
lot
Jeff.
of the,
Jump in, Jeff.
A lot of the stunnies, especially when you're dealing with like zombies and stuff like that, but in general, and the rest of in World's End as well, with the blanks or whatever they call them, the sleeves, a lot of them are not. They're not the Mad Max Fury Road stunnies. They look like regular people. So like I love how he uses extras who might not be typical stuntmen. I don't know if that's like how they would identify with their job, but he does a really good job of creating that world of that blue collar British thing, and then people get into stunt situations, and that's one reason why it's fun and you can laugh at it, because it's not just muscle bound big stunt guys. It seems like regular British people that they are hurting. It's terrible.
I get, like the guys in the bathroom fight and the fight that happens outside the pub, they definitely had both fight
in the
and
World's
wire
End
work training, because you can in the World's End you cannot move like that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they did a phenomenal job.
And the girl with the legs for arms at the one spot, not to get,
that was amazing.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck they did, but
wait for that scene.
I really did not see.
It should be ridiculous, but it's just not.
I really did not see the twist coming in the World's End.
Right.
Like I was ready for it to just be
did.
them getting into shenanigans, and there was enough of an emotional arc there. I did not see it coming in there. So I'll bring this up. I want to ask you guys. I just wrote down some thoughts after reviewing these. He likes to mess with idealism. He likes to mess with movements. I think there's commentary on gentrification. I think there's all these themes that seem to play into all three of these about begging the people who already live there to change, or begging a certain class to change, and trying to defend over and over and over again that people don't really respond that way when they're told what to do or with those kinds of expectations. So you have like the the small personal stories that Simon is going through in all of these, but you also have the bigger picture things that the world is expecting these people to change with or without their permission, and that's the problem. Is that they don't give them the permission, they don't inspire them, they expect them to. What do y'all think about that?
Yeah, I'm wondering, is that the difference between, like, because a lot of foreign films, being British films, Australian films, Korean films, whatever, will have an element of social commentary in them.
I hope so.
And like if you have an element of social commentary in an American film, you've got to be careful, because the audience will respond with, "Are you trying to tell me what to think?"
Exactly. Like we don't see any of these. Tell me how to live. We don't see any of these in Adam McKay's dramas. They're all very personal and very character driven. Step Brothers, The Anchormans, like they're still also really good, smart, dumb humor. But there doesn't seem to be a commentary. And I'm not even saying Edgar Wright tells you, it's not propaganda. He's not saying what he thinks about it. He's letting you discover it through what happens to Simon Pegg.
I think because Edgar Wright grew up in that generation where that generation grew up with Hitchhiker's Guide, which is one of the biggest fucking social commentary books ever. Like there's so much social satire of the British government in that book. And that's the kind of comedy he was inspired to. He grew up with The Young Ones. He grew up with like all of these fantastic punk anarchy references. Like it's that inspires his work.
Just again, I'm trying to be honest about this. I have not been over there enough, but from what the conversations I have with my brother-in-law, it did not seem happenstance. This is something that is very real. We ran into an actor friend of his, and we ended up having a gigantic conversation with his actor friend without either of us cueing it about class. That is still something that is the differentiation between the classes is still something very palpable. It's talked about a lot in British culture. And I think it's something that we really don't understand as Americans. We have big conversations during election times about the 99%, the 1%, the whatever, but it's not baked into our history in the same way as it is for them.
That it will be changed now because terms like the 99%, the 1% have been really active the past 5 years. But I think like British psychologists used to say that Americans were born and raised with the idea that if you worked hard, you could become president. The Brits knew you were never going to be queen because that's not for you. That's not your bloodline. So grow the fuck up and go to school. And so just like that tiny difference, like maybe that's super specific, but that tiny difference of basically being like, know your lane, find your path. Whereas in America, it was just so broad. Like, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I guess that's different. But what I would say to Edgar Wright is, because we're talking about British bar culture and class, etc. And there's a lot about London versus the country, especially in Hot Fuzz, which is not the only movie I saw, even though I keep quoting it the most. I think it's in Shaun of the Dead a lot too. Because they're like, oh, why are you living that way? And it's like, well, I'd rather be in London living this way than in the country where I can afford it. So that is also classism in a way. It's like the closer you are to city center London, the better for you. And why would you want to move to the country? So because he's taking those on, but because the specificity of the time and place, he's not preaching to us. He's not explaining to anything to us. He's saying this is the character's circumstances, and I want to show them as accurately as possible. Even though I've never been to wherever they were in any of these movies, I not only relate to it, I'm drawn to it because I'm so curious about it. So it's like it seems so close and seems like I can touch it.
Well,
but
there's something. Isn't there something
why
about...
do the British hate their stepdads?
And the British hate their stepdad.
Apparently they hate their stepdads.
Child of divorce. If you're a child of divorce in England, man, I feel so bad for you.
I mean, doesn't it say something about... He doesn't make... A lot of times when people think about British movies, if they haven't really delved into the working class movies, we're thinking of costume period dramas. As Americans, a lot of people think, oh, like the royal stuff, the crown and shit like that. I think by not making, I'm going to use a British term here, by not making posh movies, he's not focusing on that class. There is immediately, as we as Americans know from a lot of our, neorealism era, the 70s, all those great directors who were making like really grounded stuff with the lower classes. There is something that happens when you're watching stories with lower class. They're not as defined as a class, as a people. They're not as solidified with institutions having a mouthpiece or a single voice to say this is how you should live. So it automatically gives you permission at the beginning of each of these movies. If you have their point of view, if you're like, man, we are one of them and they are still figuring it out, then can you hear? Is that good? If they are still figuring it out, then we get to figure it out in a gritty situation with them. So the suspense is already up because they don't know what the fuck they're going to do tomorrow. And then he introduces these apocalyptic, crazy, ridiculous scenarios, and you realize that the cavalry is never coming. There is no cavalry. There is no institution that's going to save any of these people. It's the individuals versus the end of the world in every one of these movies.
Yeah. I just had a fun thought. If Edgar Wright hired Roger Deakins as his cinematographer, it would either lead to the greatest film in history or the biggest on-set fight you've ever seen.
Oh, the action sequences. I mean, Hot Fuzz is the best. I don't care what you say. They're really cool in The World's End because the story is a little bit like better. But when Simon Pegg is riding that horse down through the center of town with the gun sticking out, and you know that they are gonna blast $1 million on every like 10 seconds of whatever is about to come. Like it is great. It is great.
All right, I feel like we need to wrap this off and get on to the argument of what's going to survive. But just one thing before we leave, because these films, especially in case World's End and Lord of the Rings, have one very big thing in common. Right at the end of World's End, you see Simon Pegg walk up to a bar and he's decked out in apocalypse gear, and he's got a sword on his back. And if you look really closely, that sword is an exact replica of Gandalf's sword.
Is it Gandalf's or is it
Gandalf's?
It's not Aragorn's?
It's Gandalf's sword.
Did Martin Freeman steal it from New Zealand when he flew back to film this movie?
Probably.
He said, "Look, I have to make scale for a film. I have to leave the Hobbit trilogy for a second."
Yeah, it's like just give me this. Just give me this. I'll bring it back.
Before we move on, are there any? This is a comedy. Were there any lines that you guys just kill you in any of these things? Like
my favorite was the times they cut off the cursing. There was so many I can't explain it too specifically, but a character would be about to drop a huge curse and then they would like distract them and catch them off guard. That happens in every movie. They're like, I don't give the slightest bit of Mom, are you ready to go or what? Are you ready? Like they did it so many times.
They do that a lot in Shaun of the Dead.
It's so funny. There's also a great spit take
in World's End.
There's a great spit take in Hot Fuzz where there's two actors playing Romeo and Juliet in a play that they go and see, and the actor who plays Romeo is like 60 years old, the man, and the girl is like his mistress that he's having an affair with, who's maybe 40, and Nick Frost. I don't want to say it because we have a parental advisory, but it's basically like
No, say it. Say it.
Oh my god! Sorry if I coach your child and I'm a singing coach. Anyway, he says something like, come to think of it, she does seem to have a thing with older men because Johnny, whatever his name is, said that he fingered her one, and then literally there's just a spit take and the scene ends. It's like as soon as they said that, they realized how disturbing it was. So it is a fantastic
There are
spit
spit
take.
takes. They don't shy away from the physical comedy. There are great spit takes in Hot Fuzz, and that last, like the 5th or 6th bar they get to when they're really fighting a World's End, and he keeps trying to finish his pint, and he keeps trying to drink it, and he eventually gets a big gulp in his mouth, and somebody punches him, and he spits it all out. That's hilarious.
Oh, for fuck's sake! No, my favorite line in I think out of all of them in World's End is Nick Frost when he's about to leave just before he punches the door out, and it's like they know what we're doing, but they don't know that we know what they're doing, and nobody else has a better plan. So fuck it.
And then he punches the glass. Yeah, that was hilarious. Right when the beginning, one of the characters in this pub crawl is, he's not been drinking for a long time. And Simon Pegg to him says, I didn't know you were going to drink fucking rain because he's drinking water. That fucking killed me. And then when he tries to hook up again with one of the guy's sisters in the disables bathroom, he says, maybe one of them put too much paper down the toilet. I mean, we don't know what they're thinking, do we? That was so fucking awful.
So many inappropriate throwaway lines.
God,
anyway,
so
we have to move
inappropriate.
on. So
Watch
we're gonna
these
take a quick
movies.
break.
They're fucking great.
Yes.
We'll be right back.
Watch them.
All right, we'll be right back. And we're back.
We're back.
That's right. So this is the part of the episode that you've all been waiting for, where I hate every single thing about you.
John,
I hate every
leave the room to
tiny
pee.
thing. He's drinking. He's pouring Coors Light like he's peeing into a public restroom. It's like 10 feet above the glass. I didn't know.
Coors Lighties may as well be.
I didn't know Coors Light could make that much foam. Every single thing. Okay, we're back. Okay, so this is the part that everybody has been waiting for, to see what it's like when John drinks 3 Coors Lights, you asshole. Okay, no. This is the part where we decide who is going to advance. Our number 1 seed, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, or our number 16 seed, the Cornetto Trilogy. Why don't... like... Come on, man. Like... This is in the middle of...
I'll let you finish the sentence.
All right, way to blow out your microphone, ass. Okay, so why don't we do this? Because we praise these movies, and we believe that if anybody is at home and you have coronavirus isolation, stir crazy syndrome, you should watch these trilogies. But now that we've said that, let's pick them apart a little bit, because right now we praise them so much. I need to see what's going to take somebody. What's going to take away from somebody advancing? So why don't we start with Lord of the Rings? What didn't work for you, or what could have been better? John, I'm going to start with you because you would literally write a doctoral thesis on this tonight if you could.
Man, that's a tough one. What could be better about Lord of the Rings? The only thing that sucks about Lord of the Rings is that they're not even longer and there's not more of them.
Get the fuck out of here,
There's a
Dave.
few-
Dave,
no,
I wish we could mute
There are
John.
some special, as we were praising in the first half, the evolution of the special effects. There are
Dave?
some effects in Fellowship, and there are some early introductory things with Gollum that they get so polished by the time you get.
They are just
to the
shitty.
third movie.
And drink.
All right, so let's start. Fellowship. I love so much of the effects in that movie that this one, I think, stands out for a lot of people as one of the times where you kind of are like, that just didn't kind of feel like the rest of the effects. And it's when Kate Blanchett, you would have a queen, and she goes all crazy when Frodo tries to give her the ring. I've never I don't hate that part by any means. It doesn't bother me, but I think the effects on that are kind of weak. And I know we're not talking about the hobbits. Yep.
You know what? I don't want. You're done. I get it. We
What do you
get
mean?
it.
No, when you see, hold on, wait.
That's all he can find.
When you see where they go with her, I know it's not Lord of the Rings, but if anybody who saw the Hobbits in the battles of the five armies, when she has a very similar, when she kind of turns into that heightened version of herself, and she's super powerful, and she's fighting what will become Sauron and the Hobbits, and you can see the difference in technology that 12, 14 years had made. It's not even comparable. So that's one of the only moments for me that I'm just like, no.
If only The Hobbit was on our list. Sorry. Dave, what do you think?
All right. Considering we had a rather lengthy discussion last week about, the last podcast about breaking your own rules, including the laws of physics.
Oh, no,
Let's
Dave.
cover Legolas jumping up falling rocks. The rocks are falling. Legolas is falling. He jumps from falling rock to falling rock like he has some friction there. It's like, that's not how physics works.
I mean, John,
like,
that
is literally like a cheat.
I don't know if they break
John.
the rules though, because that's how he always moves. But I will agree that. No, I don't know if I'm gonna agree with that. I do have a criticism for the character.
That is one of my least famous.
Legolas.
My least favorite.
If you're a huge fan of the books and the story, I do think they kind of took some of the weight and the humanity out of Legolas and Gimli. They kind of turned them into a little bit of comic relief, which is very entertaining when you're watching the movies.
Yeah,
but there is a lot more to them in the books. They are not comedic relief in the books. And I'm not saying you have to love the books, but I do think if you have the full palette, if you're watching and reading and you get obsessed with this story, there is something that feels less than about the way they portray them in the movies that I think I would have appreciated watching them be a little bit more than just the one-liner banter back and forth. And the action stuff is pretty ridiculous for Legolas in general, right? It's pretty ridiculous at all. When he jumps on that fucking elephant at the end, really, really, really cool.
Elephant.
Yeah, the elephant. Isn't that what they call them?
Yeah.
When he jumps on that thing at the end, it's kind of like, how many months do you think it took to make that sequence? And I don't know if it was super necessary for us to see him do that.
Okay, fine. What I would say is I love the films. It took me 2 or 3 watches to get on the tree sequence. I got the global warming parallels, which is funny. This is a long time ago. The trees are great. The Ents are great. I love the history of that. I love the lore. The more I learned about them, the better. But the first watch, I was kind of like, I don't know. I feel like the whole world's about to go to war.
Was that a theatrical
tree.
cut watch? Because it is tough to swallow in the theatrical cut.
In the theatrical cut, it's definitely touched. The theatrical cut cuts out important things that are like, especially
mostly
with the trees.
Yeah, all the stuff with the trees and Sauron.
The compositing of the guy sitting in the trees could have used a bit of work too.
And so,
Fuck you, Dave.
Yeah. So there's that, and then what I would say, this is minor, and I have said this before, and people have contradicted me. I'm like, you're right. The Legolas character in the movie doesn't seem. If I had to choose any elf, his senses, the way he works with Aragorn. So shout out to Vigo and Orlando Bloom, the way they work together. The chemistry with Gimli is great, but ultimately he didn't seem almost godly. It almost seemed like it was the best of the what do you call the differentiations between them in Lord of the Rings?
It didn't seem godly. He defied fucking gravity.
Yeah, hold on, wait, what do you mean?
No. The character itself just seems. He didn't seem as full as the other characters to me. There was always something mysterious, always something hidden, and I don't know if it's just like elves in general and their lore and their mysticism or not. But to me, it always kind of seemed like, what the fuck's going on with this guy? Why is he being so quiet? And then whenever there was a battle, yes, chemistry was great. I bought it. I bought that part really
especially because you do have what's his name, Celebrim and Kate Blanchett's characters. So you get to see both of them. It's not humanity. That's not the right word. That's what we would use for a human. But you get to see a little bit more of a full picture of who their character are and all the things that they're struggling with. I know Legolas is a warrior first and foremost. So like that is established. He is a warrior. He's not a king. He's not a leader in that aspect. He's not a politician. But I do ultimately think I agree with you. I don't even like saying it, but it is one of the flatter adaptations considering Aragorn was a good adaptation.
By comparison.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that. That is a shame. But
By comparison, Vigo's probably the best, I think. I mean, they're all great, but the Vigo is. I can't believe that he wasn't the first choice. I can't believe that he wasn't the second choice. I can't believe that this choice fell upon him, and I can't possibly imagine Aragorn as being anything but him. I know in the books he's supposed to be bigger because the Dunedain are like 8 feet tall or whatever, but I can't picture it not being Vigo.
I also have this one other scene. It's where Aragorn is separated from everyone, and the other creature finds him and starts licking his face. The horse.
Yeah, the horse. That's right.
And there's a scene after that where he grabs hold of the horse and gets on it and rides off into the sunset. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like they were on set one day and went, "Fuck, it's sunset," and picked up whatever camera they could get and ran out there. It doesn't match the grade of the film. The noise ratio doesn't match anything. It is a glaring.
Are you talking about when he comes upon
difference to everything else that's shot around it?
When he's still near the water, when he's up and he sees
when he's half dead, and when he's half dead and he gets on the horse and he's riding. It's a sunset. No, it's the first one. The sun shot in particular. Yeah, and it looks like it's shot in a completely different grade of film. It looks like it doesn't fit at all.
Dude, I would imagine. Again, I'm sure your eye is even better for this stuff, but just the way we were talking about the way they had to shoot this thing, I'm sure there are lots of things like that are not quite consistent because I'm sure they shot out of sequence for so many things.
Yeah, it's just this one was really glaring. They didn't even try to fix it.
Wow.
This section is making me sad.
I mean, I had the same thing with I had the same thing with Dark Knight when there's a shot there that's like edited out of context, and it's like when he's on the bat pod, and there's this one shot that happens for no reason, and I'm like, oh, that was sloppy.
Why did they do that? Yeah,
in an otherwise perfect film.
I guess the only comfort we can take is that 1% of the viewing audience would know that they have to have a technical background to even think about that.
I mean, I get it. Sometimes you've got to get the shot and it's like, we can fix it. Okay, we can't fix it. Let's just go with it. This is what we've got to work with. Sometimes you can't get around that. I've worked on many a project where we've run up against that problem. So it's not really I think I'm criticizing for the sake of criticizing
because this movie is awesome.
Right. Let's move on. This movie's fucking great. Get out of here. This sucks. Okay.
Shout out to Brago. Shout out to Brago. Aragorn's Keep going.
Also, shout out to Jack, your brother-in-law, who got mentioned so many times, but we'll never know who he is.
Jack Doolin. Yeah. Give him a follow.
All right. Let's go.
Nobody can go to London anymore.
Let's go to the Cornetto Trilogy. Let's hopefully we can keep this a little bit lighter. Hopefully we keep it.
Yeah,
but
let's go to one of the all-time best comedies ever.
Yes. Yeah, and they had the comedy element, so now it's going to be a little bit subjective, a little bit more so than if it were into comedy.
Yeah, but, I know it's hard to have that conversation. Like, how do you compare movies? How do you compare a comedy to something that is not a comedy? I'm not going to say it's.
Yeah, that was the challenge we took upon ourselves.
Yeah.
Nobody asked for it, and we gave it to them anyway.
All right, here's the thing. First of all, let me just get specific. You already said it. I think the last 30 minutes of Hot Fuzz is not even close to the first hour and 20 minutes of that movie.
Yeah, it's
right.
It's right. But that was like I said Man on Fire, and I love Man on Fire, but the movie turned an hour in for him to become the Man on Fire. The first half wasn't the Man on Fire. The first half was the man recovering from fire, and then it was Man on Fire. That's what happened to this movie. It said, "Oh, we know how to do an action movie," and for a while it was playing the comedy, like the almost satirized element of that, and then the last half hour was like, "Watch us do this."
Again, I think I'm going to kind of spin what I said earlier. The things I love about these movies is the humanity, like when it's all grounded in what he's going through. And then there are these wonderful interjected moments of, action or zombies or whatever. But towards the end of all of these movies, it becomes mostly the action stuff. And just like any action movie, when it's mostly that, there's just not as much substance to it. So you kind of start to feel like you're watching the spectacle. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like all these movies, unfortunately, I'll say this, it was something I noticed even at the end of World's End. All of them left me feeling like the beginning and middle of each of these movies was stronger than the ending for me. I don't know if you guys agree with that. I'm drinking.
Actually, it's funny because I was watching it and I was thinking for both Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz and even World's End, this doesn't have that 2/3 of the way through movie slump that all the other movies do, where we went, the gag ran out, now we just need to finish this story, because now it's not a movie about wedding crashers or a car racer or an anchor, and now it's like this specific story, how do I wrap this up, so the gag is out. And those movies, I was like, the gags, the action elements really carried it through what would have been that slump, but then when it came time for the final action sequence, it was almost like, I just want to know. Yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Yeah.
But all worth to watch, but the last half hour of each one.
Let me ask you guys this specifically. All these movies have an epilogue, either like a full epilogue or just a tiny little gathering up epilogue. I didn't understand. I know that sounds like not that these are deep movies. I didn't understand the end of World's End. Why did Simon Pegg switch? Did I miss a detail? Did I miss something? Why did he switch to the blanks and the sleeves? He walks into that bar at the very end, and it's him.
Yeah,
and he's got 5 blanks with him. I had no idea. I was totally on board, and then the epilogue really pulled the rug out from under me. I didn't think it was necessary at all. I thought they were going to end with them sitting on that hill and watching the city burn, just to bookend how it started with them in the intro and the prologue. Right. And then it went on to that, that voiceover telling, and I just didn't quite understand that last part. And it was just another reason. I had remembered feeling the same way about Hot Fuzz and a little bit about Shaun of the Dead, although that one was so small I didn't mind it. It was strictly a comedy. Yeah, what happens with World's End? I'm actually asking now. Why did they switch him? Did I miss a detail?
No, I think he just found something to fight for, but they really didn't communicate that.
I think they just wanted to do it.
It's probably Martin Freeman walked on set and went, "Hey, I've got Gandalf's sword.
Why don't we fucking do this?"
Yeah.
And they made it up on the spot.
All right, let me try to turn that around for just a second. It's actually, that sounds like a criticism. It's actually a trap, unfortunately, that great movies can fall into. The rest of that movie was so entertaining and so good that this criticism seems to stand out in my mind, and it kind of left me with a little bit of a bad taste, because the rest of it up until that point was so tight. There was absolutely nothing wrong with the rest of it.
The good things about comedies
I'll give you, it did feel tacked on.
Yeah, but the good thing about a comedy is the end of the movie usually doesn't affect the rest of the comedy. I don't care what happens at the end of it. Happy Gilmore. I'm gonna go ahead and watch it again just for him to go to the mini golf place. Like, I don't care how it ends. I don't care if you beat Shooter McGavin. Anyway, okay, so guys, we have come to the moments of the podcast. So we are gonna do this. We're shooting this during the 2020 Corona outbreak. We are going to do this not like a proper election. We're going to do it like a caucus. So you can change your answer if somebody gives a compelling argument and pulls you to their side.
So do we want to take a vote first, and then we'll make our compelling arguments, or do we want to?
Let's go one by one.
Okay.
Everybody has their answer, right?
Yes.
Okay, which movie is going to advance? Okay, well, let's start with, because I have a guess as to what it's going to be. John, would you like to start?
Lord of the Rings, 100%. I love the Cornetto Trilogy. I do not want to discourage anyone from watching them. They are so much fun. And you know what? They're end of days movies. And I don't know if anyone else is watching a bunch of end of days movies right now, but I am. And I'm having a good fucking time. And this is a really carefree way to enjoy yourself and watch those movies. But I am absolutely voting for Lord of the Rings to continue moving on in this tournament.
You're not selling it to, I don't know. Okay, yeah, okay, you're right. Dave?
I'm sticking with Cornetto Trilogy.
Oh my God, you're going to put the pressure on me?
70%.
I just want to point out that this motherfucker.
Yeah, there was some convincing
arguments
there.
Answer is that I support Amy Klobuchar like 50%.
I just want to point out that this motherfucker went on his honeymoon to New Zealand and literally carried his new bride over the precipice at Bag End, and this fucking asshole just voted for Cornetto Trilogy. Sure,
or maybe Therese.
And I just had my 6-month anniversary.
Oh, no.
Maybe it's been 6 months. Holy shit! What have I done?
Congratulations.
Maybe she just really wanted to see the fjords, and Dave was like,
no.
Only
if we go to Bag End, baby.
Only if we go to Bag Ends.
The fjords were nice. Go see those two.
I need to touch Bilbo's door.
I kind of want to know, why are you going with the Cornetto Trilogy after the conversation we just had?
I just feel like Lord of the Rings, for all that it was, the storytelling was great.
It's our number one seed.
Production wise, it didn't age well.
Ooh.
And
Hit the buzzer, you fucking asshole. Hit
the buzzer.
you bastard.
Everything else can age well because of Lord of the Rings.
Are you talking about special
I don't know,
effects?
like we did.
Is that what you're talking about?
We did. Yeah, just like the visual effects and some of that stuff. The storytelling aged really well. But the more I watch it, the more I see like things that were missed and glitches and things like that. I mean, yeah, it's an epic series of movies. But Edgar Wright, like I said, is my favorite director ever. I'm going to lean that way. I mean, Peter Jackson is a close second. But at the moment, I'm leaning. Yeah, Phil Jackson is.
I am curious if you have any
11 championships.
I am curious if you have
11.
any. I know this would be speculative, but I am curious if you think that was because of literally just because where technology was at the time, or if that was maybe some human error that they made because of the way they filmed it all at once and it was a little disorganized.
Actually, quick sidebar. I just had a text pop up on my screen from my wife going, "Don't talk about New Zealand. I can hear you."
Thank you, Therese. Thank you, Therese. Shout out
He's
to
on his
Dave's wife.
headphones. She can't hear us.
Shout out to Dave's wife. Thank you for defending Middle Earth. She knows.
Yes. She'd move back there in a second if
Good.
she could. Incidentally, one little quick side note while we're there. The log they hide under in the first movie. It's in the middle of a park in Wellington.
What? Where the rider, the black
in the
rider
middle of
comes
the
over?
In the middle of the city.
where they're hiding from the Nazgul. Yeah, it's in the middle of the city in a park in Wellington.
Amazing. See, movie
Again,
magic.
these location scouts.
Movie magic.
Okay, I've changed. Lord of the Rings. Lord of the
These
Rings.
All right,
location
so it
scouts.
didn't hold
I've
up for
changed
you.
my
The
vote.
production value didn't
I've
hold up.
changed
Jeff,
my
give
vote.
us your vote.
I'm saying Lord of the
Yes!
Rings.
No, I've changed my vote. I've changed my vote.
Here's-
Change his vote.
I also-
He's changed his vote. We're 3.
It doesn't matter. It's a sweep. Here's what I would say though, because we've praised Lord of the Rings a lot. These the Cornetto Trilogy, they're really great watches. 2 of them are on Stars or Hulu Stars if you have the extension, which would be Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. The World's End you can rent. I think The World's End is a great movie to watch now. Because you can't go to bars anywhere, as far as I know.
Also,
So it would be cool to like
Shaun
be
of the-
kind of. It's now all of a sudden it's a nostalgia piece, even more so than it was before. But here's the thing: I would try
Shaun
to
of the
watch
Dead
Shaun
is
of
an
the Dead.
absolute classic.
I would try to watch Shaun of the Dead first, and Hot Fuzz is
They
second.
also just
and
reenacted that
it's-
scene online from quarantine.
Say that again.
Oh my god, which one?
Simon Pegg and Nick Frost
Oh,
just
okay.
reenacted the phone call scene about
That's funny.
what the plan is
That's funny.
online.
Oh, that's good.
You can
That's-
find that.
And about how the plan
for it.
changes
It's worth
every. Shaun of the Dead does have
Yeah.
the relevant
And
like where
even-
the plan's
even-
changing all the time.
Philip still gets a mention.
Aw.
Nice, Philip. Yeah, and what about the Jaguar?
Cool. So, Lord of the Rings.
Still Jaguar. So
has
Lord of the Rings
taken
is a
it.
sweep, but watch the Cornetto trilogy. But really
Absolutely give it a watch.
consider doing the hero's journey with Lord of the Rings. 3 nights in a row.
I
one
mean,
It's
movie
the
per
only
night,
journey.
do it.
If you're going to do it, let's just put it out there. You watch the extended ones. I'll just share a very subjective anecdote. I had a friend who
Yeah.
had still never seen the extended
Definitely watch
ones.
the extended.
And he enjoyed the movies, but he'd watched them like once or twice over the years since he saw them when he was much younger. And I finally got him over to my house at some point over this past winter, and he was like, let's do it, man. And we did one after the other. And he had an enormous experience, and he could not stop expressing the difference that the extended
Yeah.
versions made. It turns it into what it's supposed to be. So this is one of those things. I know some
does.
director's cuts get released, and everyone says, "Do you
Yeah.
really need to watch
It's
that?"
like the extended version of Batman versus Superman. It's an amazing film.
it's
Get
honest-
out of here, Dave. Dave, buzz yourself because
Okay, buzz
you know that
myself.
was sarcastic. So buzz yourself. Yeah, for sure. It's so great. And the extended version, we keep talking about this, and just in case you don't know, but somehow you've made it through the entire podcast, the extended version, it's not about, oh, there's more to unravel. It's that he was forced to cut it down because this was still in the age where you made money per showing. So movie theaters wanted to show the movies as many times as possible. And the first movie, really, the extended version is only 3 plus, but the next 2 are closer to 4 hours. And if you're a movie theater, that's 3 showings a day for the biggest movie of the year. So they wanted, if you make it 3 hours, you can have maybe 5 showings. So there's a lot of different things that go into why they cut it down. But this is the extended versions, for what we know, is exactly what Peter Jackson had in mind. For instance, they shaved literally a 30-minute sequence out of the final movie because they thought we would know the ending enough to be able to miss it. And if you're watching the whole thing and you're watching these storylines unravel at the same time, you need to see that that come down, because every time one character comes down, the other characters come up, and we really miss that cross section. We miss it a lot.
I mean, just to give you an idea of how good the extended edition is, I almost voted against this, and I own the extended edition on DVD and Blu-ray. So give it a look. Go the extended edition. It's worth the trip.
For Frodo.
It does make it a
For
better
Frodo.
film. Yeah.
For Frodo.
Dude,
All right, I think that's it.
All right.
Sure. So let's tease. So on our Instagram, we're going to release the bracket, and we're going to go in order from our seed. We're going 1 towards 8, right? So our 2 seed is next week. Now I know you're all sitting there thinking, what is the 2 seed for trilogies or franchises?
Oh,
There's
this
so
is
many good ones.
This is gonna be hard.
I will say we've mentioned, I think, all of our top 4 already in this podcast is a hint. So that's it. We mentioned all 4. We decided, for no reason really, but we decided that our number
For comedy.
our number 2 trilogy or franchise, we decided is The Godfather. That's what we decided. If you have other thoughts, please send us a review. Instagram, Apple Pod. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. Well, we are personally, at least. You can find us.
Yeah, if you're John's dad, it's the 5th star.
The 5th star. Yeah, it's 5 stars. The John's dad. 5 stars. So next week, we'll see. Maybe Godfather will lose to our 3rd or 4th seed, which may be a franchise that you feel
What
is
is
superior to
and what is
similar
Godfather going up against next week?
Godfather is going up against. For some reason, we buried the comedies in the end of this list, so we'll see. Because I think I'm going to have fun rewatching this, which is the Austin Powers series. That's
yeah,
right.
too.
We are going to compare
baby.
the Godfather series
Austin.
to Austin Powers. Which one is?
Everybody drink.
Which
so
one is
excited.
better? Which one will
Yeah,
advance?
baby.
Which one will compete with Lord of the Rings to find?
I mean, it's
going to
be
the
great,
ultimate
'cause-
question.
I finally have an excuse to watch The Godfather.
You fucking asshole.
Dave, can you imagine? Can you imagine if David ever see the
bastard.
Godfather?
Sacrilege.
Anyway, that's
All
right.
right, thank you so much
you have
for
1
tuning
week,
in.
film
We had a
fans.
great time. We hope you had a great time. We are really looking forward to the next several weeks of going over these things. We want everybody to stay safe out there, stay responsible. We are excited to see
Send
you back.
screenshots of you watching these movies. We'll tag you. We'll share it with our friends.
Yeah, please play along.
Yeah.
Please play along. We're hoping everybody
Play
will want
along.
to do this with us. We got plenty of time on our hands. Let's watch some good movies.
Tag us in your screenshots at the Love
Invite
of
us to the
Cinema
watch
Pod.
party, whatever. Yeah.
Invite us to the watch party, although we can't go because of quarantine. But virtually,
No,
maybe.
you can have online watch parties now.
Virtual
Exactly.
watch parties.
Yeah, get the Chrome plugin.
FaceTime, Google Hangouts, Chrome plugin, Zoom, WebMX, WebEx. See you guys next week.
All right, y'all.
Okay.
I'm back.